Thank you very much. Pleasure to be here and a pleasure to work for the town of Westford. Again, my name is Will Naser. I'm the chief assessor for the town. I've been here since May of 2021 and has been here for how long? How many years?
2018.
Since 2018. And we have other staff members. Steve Clark's the assistant assessor, and Nicolette King is a recent hire, and she is a data collector. So, and your board members, I don't know if these are longtime Westford folks, Titus Palmer and Diane Holmes, perhaps you know them. And this is a shameless plug, we're looking for another board member, so if you're interested, see how I do, I guess, today. So the job of the assessing department is to assess value property. We're really trained in value. That's my background's in banking and then in appraisal work, and that fits nicely into town assessment work. So we're really value people. When we work all year round, we don't talk about tax dollars. That's not what we do. We talk about value. We come up with a value for everything, and then that value at the end gets converted into your taxes. This discussion today is more on reducing taxes, but I'm happy to answer any questions as I go or at the end about assessing in general. So these are all the programs that we offer, and these are some general information about them. So you obviously have to own a property in Westford. It has to be your primary residence or your domicile, as it's called. The programs are you qualify for the programs, and that's annual qualification. So a lot of people think, oh, I filled out the form, I'm good forever. Not the case. Every single year you have to fill out. If you fill out 3 forms, you got to fill out 3 every year. Once you're approved or you request to be on the list, Ann keeps a really good list. We do a mailer in mid-October, and you have from mid-October to April 1st to get your information in to get a decision on your applications. So I think I've stated that April 1st is the deadline. So you still have time if you haven't applied for any of these. Qualifying letters and documents, so that we're very date driven, and the date is July 1st of each year. So if you're a veteran with you have a qualified service-connected disability, that letter has to be dated prior to July 1 to receive that for that year. Otherwise, it'll start the next year. And again, financial documents. So our year is a little bit weird. We go from July 1 to June 30th. That's a tax year or fiscal year. So if we're in the assessment date, it goes back 6 months to that. So for this year, it would be January 1st of 2023 for tax year 24, which starts July 1, 2023, goes to June 30th, 2024. How's that sound? Little wacky, but that's how it works. So we're looking really for calendar year 22 information for this year. So next year, 23. A lot of people say, oh, I didn't do my taxes yet. I didn't do them yet. It's the prior year. So next year, when you finish your taxes this year, income taxes, that you're all set for the next year. So the first program I'm going to talk about is different than anything else. So tax deferral. So the tax deferral program is all the other things I'm going to talk about, I think, are exemption programs. The difference between a deferral and an exemption. Deferral is just simply a delay in payment of the taxes. It means you've qualified, and we take your tax dollars and we put them in a special account and say you owe that at a later date. In addition to the deferral, you can get the exemptions as well. So you can get other programs. You can get money off to reduce that. Say your taxes are $6,000 and you qualify for a $2,000 exemption, then you can defer $4,000. That's how that would work. So we have all kinds of names for things, and 41A, whatever, you'll hear different things. But tax deferral is what this is. So real quickly, just to go through the bullet points, age 65, some of the other programs are age 70. This one's a little bit earlier. You have to meet the residency requirements, which would be 5 years. You have to own property in Massachusetts, not in Westford. There's income limits for both single and married folks. There's no asset restrictions, so that's different than some of the other programs. So a lien is placed on the property. The lien scares a lot of people, but it's the way that we're allowed to collect a debt. So that debt is going to be owed when the property sells. The town will collect its money. There's Westford's, I want to say it may be the only community I know of that does zero interest. So if your taxes, you're deferring $6,000 for the year, that's what it is. There's no interest. The law is 8%, and you can move it from 8% downward. Westford, at some point before I got here, chose 0. So that's kind of nice. If you do have a loan on the property, there is an extra step and requirement. You basically have to get permission by the mortgage company or bank to allow you to do the deferral. Reverse mortgage, you do not need permission, which is kind of odd to me, but you don't need permission. You can have a reverse mortgage and still do a tax deferral. We're okay with it. You have to check with the reverse mortgage people if it's not. And as I mentioned, the proceeds, the deferred money will be collected upon the sale of the property. Stop me anytime with any questions.
Is there a limit on,
Yes.
the number of tax deferrals you can do? I mean, is it only 5 years?
Nope. You can do up to 50% of the value of the property. So if your value for tax year 2024 is $500,000, you could defer up to $250,000. Once I'm in my 20th year as an assessor. One time I've seen somebody hit that limit. So that was about 27 years of tax deferral. It takes a long time to get to that. So it was kind of unfortunate. She couldn't defer anymore, and that's just the way it went. So she didn't qualify. Yes.
Just to follow up on that example you said, so if the value of the property was $500,000, say, and you can go up to, I think you said 50%?
50%.
So $250,000. So, but what exactly are you deferring there? You're deferring the tax dollars that the town has levied on you.
Correct.
On that $250,000?
Correct.
So, I don't know what that would be, but let's, for the sake of argument, say it's 10%. I don't want to scare anyone.
Yep.
So, what's that? 25,000. So, for 1 year, you'd be deferring $25,000, which ultimately has to be paid to the town.
Are you talking about a residential property?
Yep.
The average tax bill is about $10,000.
Oh, okay.
So 10,000. So use 10,000.
So let's say 10.
Yep.
So for every year and you have to apply every year.
Every year you have to qualify,
every
correct?
year you're there, let's say it stays at 10, which
Yep.
we know it's unlikely, but still. So every year you're on, that 10 becomes 20, becomes 30, and so on. And it's only due when that property is finally sold.
Correct.
Zero interest on that. So for example, if it was 5 years, it would be $50,000 on the example we're doing, no interest, and when you sold your property, you owe the town, and that's where the lien comes in, $50,000.
Correct.
Okay.
Correct.
I just wanted to...
The other, No, it's a good, the other point is you have to own and occupy the property. So own and occupy, I've had situations, unfortunately, where people get sick and they move out of the property and they're in a assisted living or they're somewhere else, they're living with relatives. So usually there's a grace period of a year, and then once that year's up, you can't defer it. You're not occupying the property. So that's something that we look at as well. You're checking off and signing that you are occupying the property. So the deferral, and I keep track of that every year. So the other thing is, remember, your value is probably going to go up too. So that the needle moves, the taxes go up, the value goes.
So, yeah, it would be 10 every year, it would be whatever it would be.
Right, right. Yep.
So just one final thing on that.
Sure.
So, in that example, say, where you qualify, say, for 5 years, and if for some reason on the 6th year you did not, right?
Correct.
You still don't have to pay the taxes due on the 50th until the sale of the house, which might be several years later.
Perfectly fine. We've had people miss years, just flat out forget to apply, that just skips a year, and either they pay it or whatever happens, and then the next year they go right back into it. And the reason people say, well, why do I need to qualify every year? Because your income could change. You could hit the lottery, right? No? Blind, we give an exemption for blind, so I always get the question, well, the person's blind, why do they have to qualify? Well, there are procedures where you can get unblind, or whatever the term would be.
Well, I'm just going to ask Kenneth who wants to.
Cited.
I have a question.
Oh, yeah, sorry.
Sorry. If the owner is deceased and the heirs sell the property, say, 2 or 3 years after the death, what can you describe that?
Well, what happens is the interest, so we do kick in an interest rate once that person has passed. So it's incumbent upon whoever's in charge to, that does kick in some interest. So that's something the tax collector would get involved with. But you could no longer defer, and you would have to pay that money back. I don't know what the amount of time would be, but it's not something that we would allow to go for 2 or 3 years.
Who actually make the decision? So you said it was 0 interest right now, although in that gentleman's case example, it could actually kick in. Who makes the decision that is going to stay 0 1 year, or it's going to go to something else?
Well, it's 0 for the program while you're applying and involved in the program. Once someone's deceased,
Understood. But
then the tax collector, we get a notification that the person's no longer with us.
Not so much
I
that.
think it's town meeting. Is it town meeting that votes?
That's where it was going. Yeah.
Oh, yeah, right, town
It
meeting.
has to be a town meeting.
Right.
Voted on by.
There's something called local options with all of the programs we have. And Westford's done a great job of maximizing the local options. For instance, some of the exemptions are $500, and you can maximize, you can double them. So you'll see, we've put it at $1,000. Local option to change. We have one on the warrant for this March 23rd town meeting to change a residency require on a veteran program from 5 years to 1 year. So those are all things that have been done over the past 30 to 40 years that town meeting does that.
Right. Okay, that's what I was after. Thank you.
Yeah, or city council in a city. Yes.
If your house, well, my house is in a trust,
Uh-huh.
and my son lives in one half of the house and I live in the other half of the house, if I went into assisted living, would I be able to qualify for that?
You wouldn't be living at the property.
Yeah, I
No.
would, but the house is in the name of the trust.
No. So residency, own and occupy is big with us. So
Okay.
you own it, or the trust owns it, when you're not occupying it. So maybe if you went in August, would say, okay, you're good for this year, but come next July, you're not going to qualify for it. Trusts are another thing we get involved with. We see a lot of trusts, and Ann and I do our best with the trusts. I'm not a real estate attorney, But trusts are things, if you, before you go into a trust and have that, and you're involved with these programs, it's best to call us and discuss with us what type of trust are you going into? Is it gonna still qualify for these programs? Usually with a trust, you need to be both a trustee and hold a beneficial interest. Those are the two things we look for. So you say, well, I don't know what that means, but what it means is that you're listed as a trustee, and usually there's a list of beneficiaries. You have to be listed as a beneficiary as well. Something we ask you to bring the trust in, I review it, and then give you the yes or no on it. Okay, so we're going to jump into the exemptions. So the deferral sits way over here. It's different. Now we're going to do a whole host of exemptions. So deferral is delay in payment. Exemptions are way over here. So that means you qualify, you get the money off, and you're happy. There's no payback. It's just part of your qualifications. So we have a whole bunch of veteran programs. So all of the programs I'm talking about today, where there's a tax deferral or an exemption, these are all under Massachusetts General Law, Chapter 59, Section 5, and then various clauses. The veterans, we have a whole bunch of them, but we don't have everybody in every category, I don't think. So, but they are available programs. If someone were to move to Westford, they may qualify for these. So the programs 22 through 22F. So in this particular case, 22 is a $800. Excuse me. This is the general. So their $800 is the lowest amount we have, up to a full exemption. So full amount on taxes, and we have a few folks that do get that. What we're looking for when you first apply are some military forms, the DD 214 form, and then we look for that letter that tells us the percentage of disability. So it's not just being a veteran, it's a veteran with a service-connected disability, because we have a lot of veterans, and unfortunately, unless you have that letter from the VA that says you have a service-connected disability, then you don't qualify. Yep.
When does the 800 apply? What quarters is it written on?
Well, generally, the third and the fourth quarter, so it would be $400 off the third quarter, which is your bill due February, and $400 off the fourth quarter, which is due May 1st. We're going to try to change that up, and I'm going to work with Allison and Annette and Ann and everybody. We're going to try to get people to submit things, and then we can apply things so they go on the third quarter. Your paper bill would show that reduction. That's something we're going to attempt to do the next year coming up. I haven't told you yet, but you're going to learn about that. So again, just to cover all the bases, these are the veteran programs. There's a lot of them. 800, the benefit, kind of look at that second column, the benefit, $800, $1,500, $2,500, $3,000. There's the full real estate amount. That's somebody that's died due to service-connected incident. And also the full amount is for if you're a paraplegic, all due to service.
All right, quick question on that.
Mm-hmm.
So if there are two veterans with 10% or more disability within one household, and they're both on the, do we get two?
They get two. So that's the veteran stuff. And Ryan Cobley is our veteran agent. And I'm sorry, there's a gentleman here that used to, our previous veteran agent. I'm sorry, what's your name?
Terry Stater.
Terry, okay. So Ryan, you can see Ryan, and he'll direct you for veteran stuff. And we work with Ryan occasionally, and he sends people over to us. So now these are the non-veteran or the elderly or senior. There's a whole bunch of them here. So surviving spouse, senior, means tested, CPA, which is Community Preservation Act, blind, financial hardship, and social security disability. So I'll go through each one of these. So the general information on these, you have to have lived in Massachusetts for 10 years and owned property in Westford for 5 years. You get one exemption per year. So the CPA is technically not an exemption. It's a reduction of a surcharge. So you can get CPA, and you can get an exemption, and you can do a deferral. You can also get a means tested. That one doesn't fall under that way. So you can apply for a number of these, but the exemption, you can only get one of those. As I just mentioned, the deferral program. And I mentioned earlier the trust. If you have a trust, you have to both be a trustee and have a beneficial interest. So it's hard to see, and the sheets are probably hard to see. This is pretty small, but these are the various programs we have. And I think Annette has the green sheet, she calls it. Where's the green sheet? Right?
Yeah.
The green sheet has all that stuff on it. So again, we go by these numbers or names. I'll just go through the tax dollar benefits. So $683. These two programs here are what we shoot for. This one, that's the biggest one, $2,000. So that's the one we try to qualify you for. If not, you can fall back to the $683. So there's different income and asset limits are listed there. Income limit and asset limit for single and married. Excuse me, the income limit is not, we don't care about the income on the 17D program, so that's kind of nice. If you have assets below that amount and we don't look at the income, then you may qualify for that. The means tested senior exemption, so that's one that, and you probably know about this, it happened before I got to Westford. There was a group of people that got together and said, we're missing, there's a program that we need that will be means tested. Means tested means it's a variable program, so there's varying amounts that occur on that, as little as $100, as much as $2,800. That's the reduction on your real estate taxes. So that's kind of an interesting one to qualify for if you do qualify. The notes on the right-hand side must have received the Massachusetts circuit breaker credit on your income tax. Is everybody familiar with that? Has anybody received that? A few people? Okay. So if you have that, that's the first thing I look at. If you don't get it on your Massachusetts income tax, then you wouldn't qualify for the program. We do an exemption for a CPA. So that's your Community Preservation Act exemption. That's very, very generous on the income limits. And I think that maybe, I do have a roll-up of all the numbers. That may be the most, does that sound like the most applications we receive are probably CPAs. That's that little amount on your tax bill below the real estate tax amount. 37A is blind. So to qualify for blind, you need to get a certificate of blindness from the Massachusetts Commission on the Blind. And again, if it's August, you're going to be the next year. It has to be prior to July 1. That's the qualifying date. Yeah, it looks like I have a mistake. There is 18, clause 18, and that's the wrong information. That's a hardship one, a financial hardship. That's a difficult one because that's kind of an open book. There's no requirements on that. That would be something where somebody comes to the Board of Assessors and just says, I can't pay, and this is due to this, or I need some help with this. Not too many applications for that program, but we do have it available, financial hardship. Disability by Social Security, so that one is interesting because it's age 69 and below, younger than 69. It's a $2,000 reduction, and you do need the letter from the Social Security Administration saying that that you have a disability. Any questions on those?
On the disability one, are there any income or asset restrictions?
No. Yeah.
Excuse me.
Yeah.
What does CPA stand for?
Community Preservation Act.
Oh, okay. And so how does that work?
I do have a calculation of it. You'll see it on the screen coming up.
Okay.
But the CPA it's called a surcharge, and it's, the way it works for residential properties, it's your value minus 100,000 in value times the tax rate times 3%. So you'll see it in just a little bit, but it's usually $150, $200 annually. So.
Can I just share on that, Bill? That 3% surcharge or tax on your, if you look at your real estate tax bill, that money isn't part of the operational budget for the town. That doesn't go to the senior center, police, fire. It goes into a separate account called community preservation, and that's what they use to buy up like farmlands, to renovate old historic buildings. I think that's how we got, what do you call it? Peace Boston Camp, right. So that is something that you can get waived.
Right, right. And just to elaborate a little bit more, so there's three pieces of the CPA. There's open space, to buy open space, affordable housing, and historic properties. There is a CPA committee that is the steward of that money. They're in charge of that, and they do what they think is proper with that money. I think in the past, recently, we've purchased open space land for the Conservation Commission.
Here's another question.
Yes.
Yes, I have a question. If you do the tax deferral, you're not eligible for the circuit breaker. Am I correct in understanding that? Because you're not paying taxes.
Right, I believe that's correct. I'm not an income tax guy, but I believe you can, if you got the deferral, you don't get this circuit breaker. Right.
Right, and again, not to interject, but that's because in order to get circuit breaker, you're paying more than 10% of your income in property taxes in order to get the state circuit breaker. So if you're not paying property taxes, then you're not paying more than 10% of your income.
Thank you, Annette. So each screen is, each slide is going to drill down a little bit on the programs on that first summary slide I had. So this is the 17D program. Again, the amount is $683 for this year. So that amount changes every year. 640 something last year. Does that sound about right, Ann? Yeah. So every year that changes. Next year it'll be in the 700s. It goes off of cost of living adjustment. 70 years old. Second homes, if anybody has a second home, they do count as an asset. Your primary home does not count. So obviously, no one would qualify. And there's no income limit, as I mentioned before.
How do you determine asset limit?
Those are state guidelines. So that's the limit, and then we review what somebody submits to us. So assets would be stocks, bonds, retirement accounts, second homes, condominium, vacation places, that kind of stuff. That would be an asset. Income would be what basically your Social Security and any retirement that you get. 41C program, Again, that's what we shoot for. It's a $2,000 reduction. Again, 70 years old by the qualifying date. Similar things with the assets. The single cannot exceed 32,000 and 64,000 in assets. Married, 49,100 in assets of 89,250. So this is unique to Westford. Westford's the only one that has this program. The Westford means tested. There's about 11 other communities that have adopted their own program, means tested. But is anybody on that committee? Annette was, okay. So you could tell a story or two about it, but I'll spare you. But that had to go through the state legislation, get approved, and now it's actually up for renewal. It has to be renewed. It's called a sunset law that it goes for 3 years. Unless you renew it, it goes away. So we're hoping it'll be renewed. We asked for a few little tweaks on it. So this is called the means tested. It's age 65, so a little bit less. There are income maximums and asset maximums. And the calculation, I put the calculation in just because I thought it's interesting. People ask how it's done. This is definitely the most complicated thing that I do for any of the programs. So this one is the last one that goes in, because we see what other programs, and we see your income tax, your circuit breaker, and then we go through, I go through a reduction. So it starts off with your real estate tax amount. We take your income and multiply it, take 10%. So if say it was 50,000, it would be 5,000. We subtract out the circuit breaker amount, so that's line 44 on your Massachusetts income tax return. And then any other program, if you got a 41C program, we would subtract out 2,000. If you got a 17D, subtract out 683. And then that would give me your number, your exemption. Now, if yours goes below 50%, then you only get up to that amount, or you don't qualify at all. Either way, one way or another, you get the exemption if it meets the line, or if it's too much. Then what it's saying is you've already maximized, and we can't give you more than 50% off of the taxes. Okay, so I did put an example in, so I should just flip the page here. So the example is your taxes are $6,500. Your income would be $35,420. 10% of it, $3,542. Circuit breaker, the maximum was $1,200 last year, so say you got the maximum. And then you qualified for a 17D program, $683. So then the math on that is $1,075 is what's left over. You're below, you don't, that's not 50%, greater than 50%, so that exemption would be allowed. That would be the exemption amount allowed. So you would get off, your taxes would be this and this would come off of that, come off of your taxes. This is the CPA, which we've talked about. So here's the calculation of the CPA on this one. So if you just look at the bottom part, if your value of the property is $500,000, we subtract out $100,000 of value. It gives you $400,000. We multiply it by the tax rate, and then we multiply it by the chosen amount in Westford, which is 3%. And there's your CPA, 165.24 shows up on your tax bill. So Westford, when it I think it was 2004 when it adopted CPA, you could do anywhere from, I think it's 0.5%, maybe it's 1%, up to 3%. Westford chose 3%, can be adjusted. And it has the residential exemption. So commercial properties don't have an exemption. So if you're a commercial industrial property, you don't get that reduction of 100,000. So they pay a higher rate or a higher CPA amount. So I just wanted to show how that was done. The 37A is blind. So as I mentioned, the certificate we would need from the Massachusetts Commission for the Blind. Or if you get a letter from your physician saying that you are legally blind, that's acceptable as well. The other thing to mention, all of this, any application that comes into us is all confidential. The staff, not even all of the staff, only probably Ann and myself I think we do all of that ourselves. So the staff, any sensitive information that comes in, it's held within the department. The Board of Assessors does have the right to review that too. Typically they don't, but just so you're aware of that, it's all confidential information. So this is an unusual program, but it's called a hardship program. And in all the years I've been doing this, I've probably had only 3 or 4 people get granted it. But it is available, and it is part of the menu of exemptions we have. So there's nothing in here. It just says if you're age infirmed and have a financial hardship, you can apply for it. You would want to have a letter, have something and the board would make a decision on that. That's what it is.
So there's no mention of income or assets?
No. Nope. You just a blank slate, and you fill in what it is, and the board looks at it and says,
Yay or nay?
yeah, yay or nay, exactly. Killed in line of duty, again, is a full real estate amount. Social Security disability, again, if you qualify for this, you would have to get the letter. And I apologize, I said there weren't income limits. There are income and asset limits on this. But the tip-off would be we would need the Social Security letter from the Social Security Administration stating you have a disability. It's a $2,000 reduction, and it ends at age 69. So hopefully you would end that one and be able to go into the other program, the 41C, at age 70, and you would continue with that $2,000 reduction. This is just a roll-up on last year, all the programs, how many we granted. So I don't have how many we denied, but there's the number granted. You can see the CPA is 136 people. So the other thing is, these are state programs locally. We do get a state reimbursement through through the recap. So some of that is a percentage basis. The town gets reimbursed for it. So it's about 1/3 of the money. Yes.
Silly question. The town needs $100 million every year, right? And the tax rate and the assessment, all that other kind of stuff, plays into what each homeowner has to pay. And a program like this, if the state is reimbursing only 1/3 of it or whatever, who picks up the other money? Is it the other taxpayers?
Yep, the other taxpayers, right. So that's how that works. It's there's a certain amount of money We have an account, and we put money in there annually, so it is collected. So the,
Like part of the rainy day fund that they have, that kind of thing?
it's called, the technical name is, it's called an overlay account. And that's a discretionary account by our department, and it encompasses all of the exemptions, the exemption amounts that are not covered. It also counts for abatements, appeals that are done. Folks that appeal their property come out of that. So that is an account that sits there, and that money is collected.
How does the town know how much to put into that pool?
Well, we have a history of what we've done. So it does, it's, and the state wants us to have enough money in there. So if, say, the biggest taxpayer in town is the Cornerstone Plaza, so if they appealed their value, so that's one piece of it, is the exemption comes out of it. Another, so it's kind of a conglomerate account. But if Cornerstone appealed their value, let's say I blew it and I had the value really wrong and we had to give back $150,000, that would come out of that account, or $1 million, or whatever it is. But you bring up a good point, and I'll just jump into this. So jumping back to the more macro thing about assessing and what we do is Dan O'Donnell is the finance director for the town. So the town needs about $142 million to run. So Dan does his best by getting money from all these different things: motor vehicle, investments, fees, fines, and he adds all that up. And so he adds up that, and then he comes to me and says, here's the gap amount that we need. So it's, a lot of people think it's the reverse. It's, we're the last one in the boat. We figure out that gap amount. So then he says, we need $94 million. So the whatever it is, $94 million comes from real estate taxes, two places: real estate taxes and personal property taxes. So if you own a business, you may also be paying taxes. That's personal property. Second homes, the Summer Village folks, anybody Summer Village used to get a form. We exempted that, so that doesn't happen anymore. But the two pieces, the two biggest pieces are the real estate taxes and the personal property tax. That's where that comes from. It's a simple math equation. We take the value and divide, or the amount we need by the value, and that comes up to a fraction, 0.01377. That is $13.77. We apply that $13.77 times your value. You pay according to the value of your property, so then you would, comes out to $5,000, $6,000, whatever it is. So that's kind of drilling down a little bit, but that's how it works.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Okay, we have a couple other tax relief programs that are offered by the town, but not by the Board of Assessors. And I think Annette and Allison were going to talk about the TREAD program and the senior tax work-off. And when they're done, I'll come back up if you have any other questions on, I think that's it. Yeah, if you have any other questions on assessing in general or on these programs. Thank you.
Thanks, Will. That was great. Do you want to talk about anything in particular?
No, you're good.
All right. So, hi. So I'm Allison, I'm the social worker, and I help to oversee the programs that we run through the senior center. So the first one is tax relief for the elderly and disabled. That is a program that is for people 65 and older, or people who have a state-recognized disability, so are either on SSDI or SSI. And it is a donation-funded account that we have that allows for people to apply for assistance based upon a committee's review of their applications. So people file applications, there's a committee that meets every December. They review each application and the level of need that's indicated from the information provided within. People need to explain what their income sources are for their household, as well as what the household expenses are. And then the committee looks at the difference between those amounts. So there is no set income limit for this program. It is decided by a committee based on the comparable level of need between the income and the expenses, and then how many people apply that year, what the comparison is between the applications that they get. So we don't discourage people from applying for it, but it's usually the people whose expenses and income are the closest together who end up getting awards from that. It's not a big account because it's based on how many donations come in from taxpayers on any given year, and how much is carried over from the previous year. So the awards are between 500 and 1,000 usually. So 500, 750, 1,000, depending upon the level of need and how the committee votes. Does anyone have any questions about that? Because it's one of the more vague programs in terms of.
Do you need to be elderly and disabled, or just elderly? You could be elderly or disabled. Okay.
Exactly. So 65 or older or disabled.
Okay.
Yep.
How do people donate, and how much money are you getting in a year?
Oh, that's a really good question, because I am not privy to the account itself. It doesn't, it's not held by me. But I believe that taxpayers are asked for donations at some point in their tax bill, and that they can send in money. And I think that there's a way, do you know if there's a way on the website to do it? There is a way on the website, okay.
Where you pay your tax bills on their website, it does allow you to put in shred.
All right.
That's one of the selections.
So you knew the answer. You were just trying to elicit the answer. I appreciate you, Terry Stater. Yeah, so, but I really don't know the number in the account. And Christine Collins usually comes with it to the TRED committee meeting so that the committee knows what they have to work with and what they're voting on. And they do not tend to empty it every year because they never know what more donations will come in for the following year.
So those of us that may have RMDs that they have to get rid of their money, it's a tax deductible donation. So any time money you give to the town for these programs is a tax deduction. So Al knows how to handle that.
Thank you again for that. Yeah, it's a worthy cause. We see a lot of folks who really are just living on very low Social Security amounts and have expenses that are either exceeding or matching their income each year. So there are a lot of people in need. We get around 25 to 30 applicants a year, I would say, for that program. And I basically collect the applications, make sure that all of the information that's required is contained in them, and then organize them in a spreadsheet for the committee. And that is, again, all kept confidential in my office, locked file drawers, that kind of stuff, and then the committee just gets it for their meeting and returns it. All right, so senior tax work-off program. One caveat is that there's actually a senior tax work-off program and a veterans tax work-off program. There are 20 slots for seniors 60 and over who want to participate, and 5 slots for veterans of any age, 18 and over. So this program is also not means tested. You can have any income and participate in this program. And it is a way to apply to work in a town department. You basically get paid minimum wage, which is currently $15 an hour, for up to 100 hours for up to $1,500 off of your property tax bill. And the way that it works is that we send an email out to all the town departments. We solicit as many job openings for people as we can in different town departments. And then we ask people to apply to the program. If we have more applicants than we do jobs, we let new people do it first, and then we hold a lottery to pull any repeat folks that want to do it again. The last few years, we have not had as many applicants as we have had slots. So we used to get a lot more people than we had openings, but it seems like it's slowed down since we put the program on pause during COVID. So that program, the applications are due this year, May, I want to say 24th. It's always sometime around the end of May. We have the applications here today. Annette might be waving them behind me. So if anyone's interested in it, we collect those applications and then see if we have more people than positions, do a lottery, and then I have a meeting with the interested parties in June. People get placed in departments in July or September if they're working in the schools, and then they have until March 15th to finish the work. So you don't have to work very much per week. You know, some people who still work part-time do it on days that they're off. Most people who do it are retired. We just a couple years ago instituted a rule where if someone is a senior who is physically unable to do the work but wants to participate, they can get a doctor's form filled out and assign a designee to work for them. Obviously, you have to have that person available who wants to work for you, but some people do. And veterans can have a designee regardless. Is that right, Terry?
Correct.
Yeah. So Ryan is in charge of the veterans' money, but we do the placements for veterans and the processing of the applications as well, just because it's so few, and we're kind of used to running it. So that's how that program works. Does that make sense, or do people have questions?
Yeah, that's an interesting one. So you said 20, I think you said, 20 positions, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So if you have 30 jobs when you go trolling around for them, you still only do 20. Who's setting that limit on the 20? Is that the state or is that Westford?
So it's based upon us. It's definitely within the departments, and it comes from the departmental budgets that we have the slots allocated. So that money, I believe, is in the senior center budget that Jennifer oversees and in the veterans budget that Ryan oversees.
We have to go to, I think, go to the select board for approval on that because it does come out of
We
our.
did.
Town budget.
It does
Right.
come out of our town
It's a
budget.
slot, it's like a line
So-
item.
Right.
So 20
So
times
the
1,500.
state's not involved in the non-veteran piece of it, that's the senior piece. It's just purely Westford.
Well, the state allows for this program to exist, but the towns determine how much money is going to be in it. Yeah, so some towns have a ton of different jobs, some towns have very few jobs, and towns also offer different amounts as the full amount that you can get off. So it used to be $1,000. I guess we went back to the select board and town meeting several years ago, and it was increased to $1,500. And then the hours just shift with whatever minimum wage is at that point, but the upper, the full dollar amount is
15.
determined in the town budget, yeah.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah.
So for this year, it would be the 15.
Yep, it's still the 1,500 this year, and it's still, they decided to stay with the 20 slots for seniors and 5 for veterans. Unless, I don't know if that can ever change at town meeting once it happens, but that's not what the proposal is. Yeah.
Share some of the jobs that they are.
Oh, yes.
Would that have to be reported as income?
It does have to be reported as income. So for senior tax work-off, people need to basically the setup is that the government requires people to be set up as temporary town employees. So you do all of the tax forms like you would if you were entering a new job. And you also have to have OBRA money, the retirement fund for town employees, taken out. It does not take out Social Security because it's a town job, but it takes out other mandated taxes, and then people end up with slightly lower than the full 1,500 once those taxes are taken out, and they can ask for the OBRA money back immediately after they're finished with the program. Yeah, so that is a deterrent for some people to kind of weigh the inconvenience of that aspect of things, and you'll get a 1099 the following year, or a W-2. W-2, sorry, yeah.
So how mechanically does that work then? So you become an employee,
Yep.
part-time employee, you go through all the things that you need to do for that. When do you see the benefit to you? So are you being paid every week, every 2 weeks, or no, it's just being accumulated for you?
Very good question. So people keep timesheets, so they're assigned to a department. Say you're in the assessor's office doing filing tasks. You're keeping all the hours that you work, and then you're having Will, as your supervisor, sign off that you did those hours.
Right.
By March 15th, you're going to hand in those timesheets to me at the senior center, and we will add up the numbers, make sure that they're correct, and then I take the whole packet of your employee paperwork and your timesheets, and I walk it over to the town HR office, have them create your whole profile as an employee that allows you to get a payroll check, which is, it's technically a payroll check. They have payroll issue you a check, and then that check goes to the tax collector's office for you to sign over to your taxes. So that happens for your, is there a May tax bill? It happens in time for the May tax bill. So that's why we end people's work around March 15th to allow for time for that paperwork processing to happen at Town Hall. Does that make sense?
It does, and it makes it much clearer, so thank you. But
Yeah.
just, if you don't mind, so carrying on with that.
Sure.
So are there any other requirements? And Bill was talking about the various requirements for the exemptions, but this one seems, I mean, there's a process, and you've got to fill a job and da-da-da, but there's no income, there's no asset, there's...
You have to own and occupy your home.
Okay.
But there is no income and there is no asset limit. It's really being of the age or being a veteran, and owning and occupying your home, and then being able to be placed in a town department. So there has to be a match between a town department and what you're willing or able to do for a skill set. But other than that, that's it.
Can two people in the same household apply?
No.
Okay, so there is another little thing.
Yes, sorry. One member of a household at a time, correct.
And again, this is like Bill's programs, you have to reapply every year?
You do have to reapply every year, and we have many repeat participants in it, mainly because there hasn't been a high demand for the jobs. But if we do have higher demand than there are spaces, that's when we'll do a lottery and let the people who have never done it before do it first before we pull lottery.
Jobs are easy.
What's that?
Most of the jobs are easy.
Most of the jobs are easy. We sometimes are not able to fill certain jobs. The Housing Authority has wanted some light maintenance workers for a few years. That has not been a job that we've been able to fill, unfortunately. The Parks and Grounds Committee had some kind of outside labor that we did fill this year. It really just depends on the age and the health of the applicants, what we're able to, and what the department needs are. I would like it if even more departments had jobs for people to participate. You know, the schools usually do it, some of the schools. WA tends to take a lot of people who, as greeters at the front doors. People think that's fun. The fire department has been taking people for the last few years, and that does involve some custodial work, so that, you know, is a
Get your
select.
ride on the fire engine.
I have not heard about any.
Job description.
That should be, maybe they'll get more options. All right, we can talk to them about that for sure. Yeah, we have tons of people come to the senior center because we really try to take people here that if there aren't other jobs in the community, to try to make sure as many people who want to do it can. So I work with Katie, our program and volunteer coordinator, and try to get people to help out in different programs to get hours if they can't get their full number from one of the other town departments. Yeah, so it's people have fun doing it, or they say they do, so. And $1,500 is pretty good to get off your taxes. I mean, it's a little bit less once the taxes are taken out, but not much.
I noticed on the form it's asked you if you have a state pension. Does it?
The reason it asks that is because then they don't have to set up that OBRA account for you. So everyone has to have that small amount taken out for retirement, but everyone's at retirement age, so they can retrieve it afterwards. But if someone already has it, then they don't need to do a new account for someone.
So then does it go into that pension pot, or what happens to it?
I believe that it does. I would have to double check with HR. That is a little bit outside of my realm of the program. They handle that over at Town Hall, but I believe that they still have to take it out, I think. Yeah. She was asking if people are already in the town retirement, do they still put the OBRA money in?
It depends on what retirement program. Like teachers have their own separate program, so if you were an actual town employee, town of Westford,
Yep.
and you were in the right group, then OBRA would contribute to that, correct?
Okay.
That account. I don't know, I think you can still retrieve it though.
Oh, you can, yeah, that's my understanding. We hand something out at the end of the program that instructs people about how to get themselves taken out as a town employee with which HR does, and then they can go to Great West and request the funds back, and they'll send them a check. Any other questions? Did you want to say anything else about it?
Nope, I'm good.
All right.
Right. And in the assessing department, we've participated for 2 straight years with the senior tax work-off. It's fantastic. It's working on the computer and database stuff, and we've had really good luck, so it's a great program. I think I'm at the end here. I am. But if you have any questions at all, one kind of rules of thumb that I always tell people, if you own property, January is the time to go onto the website, to call me, call Ann, call anybody, check your property information. Everybody says, I haven't done anything in 25 years. Well, guess what? We do things every year, and there could be a change in your record. You want to make sure that it's correct. But we have, just take a look, make sure the value seems appropriate. You can come down and we can give you a full printout. Every year you should do it because we change things every year. That's just kind of a general rule of thumb on owning property. If you own vacation property in Maine or whatever, check it. Just make sure you check it. Just lastly, the exemption programs are available, and in my opinion, we have small numbers, and I know, I think we could have bigger numbers, more people could apply for these. The qualifications, the limits are too low in my opinion, and those, we've maximized those, but that's a legislative thing along with the amounts. We're doing everything we can, and I know there is a new bill for everybody in the Commonwealth of Massachusetts. It's not the municipal something bill, but there's perhaps a change on one of these programs where it's up to the town. Instead of $2,000, you can do whatever the town decides. So that's going to be our mechanism. I think if that goes through in the future, we can change that, because a lot of these things, in my opinion, are antiquated. All these programs came in the late 70s and early 80s, and the limits have maximized and are just not where they should be. But you have until April 1st, and we're going to switch this program probably to the fall, I think, to do this, so it's fresher in your mind, and then people can apply in October, so we'll do it right before the applications go out, then you can apply. Ask questions. Confidentiality is always something we hold very highly. Call me, come into my office, shut the door, we can talk. Come to the, Ann does a lot of, Ann Seidel, I don't know if I introduced her, but Ann is fantastic. She handles all the applications, does a great job, and Ann is great. She's very knowledgeable about that. Steve and Nicolette will also help you too. But thank you so much for having me here.